Hey yo, what is up FPG fam? Further here and welcome back to another Aether Gazer video. So Gung Chen is officially going to be releasing on February 20th. They've been announcing it all over their social media pages. They even put out her PV, her trailer on their official YouTube channel, which was fantastic by the way. The ENVA for Gung Chen, chef's kiss, you did an amazing job. Unfortunately, we would not be able to hear you in the story moving forward, but at least we got you for the PV, and at least we got to hear you for some combat sequences within game. But once again, unfortunate that it's not going to be for the story, but I digress. I talked about the ENVAs in my last video. If you want to check that out, you can. I'll have it linked at the end of this one. But for today's video, I did want to talk about Gung Chen because I think she is probably, arguably, one of my most anticipated modifiers. Actually, she is one of my most anticipated modifiers. Outside of Jinwoo and Ling Wang, Gung Chen is what I would consider possibly the poster child for Aether Gazer at this point in time. I mean, her design is a chef's kiss. It's fantastic, right? What she's able to do in game is considered, in my opinion, a must pull, which we'll talk about here in just a second, especially for the Tianwan Gen Zone. She's just a phenomenal modifier all around, and so I want to go ahead and talk about her because I'm extremely excited for her to be in game, and that's going to be relatively soon. So we'll talk about her skills, her kit. We're not going to go too in depth about the skills. I'm just going to give you the hard-hitting facts, what you need to know. I'll probably go more in depth when she officially releases in game on the global side. We'll talk about her sigils, and we'll also talk about her signature functors and possibly some team comps, at least what I'm going to be looking forward to, right? So I do hope you enjoyed today's video. I do hope you get some value from it. With that being said, let's go ahead and hop in. Gung Chen, I mean, what bad can I say about this modifier? She's absolutely fantastic. I use her on my CN account, and she's just tons of fun. Now, there are multiple different ways that you're going to be able to use her. She, once again, is of the Tianwan Gen Zone, and I think she's an absolute necessity if you are going to be using modifiers from that Gen Zone, which there are tons of modifiers that are going to be coming out now and in the future for that Gen Zone that she's going to be pivotal in. So I think that's why she's a necessity, like almost a must pull. Actually, I would consider her a must pull if you're going to be maining Tianwan Gen Zone modifiers, but she's also water and a rage modifier. Now, going over her kit really quickly, I think all you really need to know right now is that she is the CC queen. She is the crowd control queen. I don't think any other modifier can crowd control or CC like Gung Chen. She's able to lift enemies into the air. She's able to pull them in, gather them in like no one else's business. She can pretty much gather from across the map. Any map that you enter into with her skill 3, she can gather them, which is insanity, right? So she's able to do a lot there in of itself. So she has a lot of great supporting capabilities in that aspect, and then within her signature functor as well as her Aether code, which we'll talk about here in just a second. Now, her dodge skill, she's able to enter 0 time, which is fantastic for 2 seconds, and she's also able to gather enemies as well within her dodge. So you can see that she's just a CC queen. That's all you really need to know at this point in time. She has yin and yang marks, she does water damage and all that good stuff, but once again, we'll go more in depth when she officially releases in game. Now, talking about her ultimate, if she's standalone, she's going to deal 1500% water damage, and when I say standalone, I mean not ultimate skill chain. And then when Tianwan modifiers hit enemies, depending on the number of Tianwan modifiers deployed, you can obtain 2%, 3%, or 4% ultimate charge. So keep that in mind. Now with the ultimate skill chain, it's going to be with Ling Wang, and I argue to say this is one of the best looking ultimate skill chains in the game. Right next to the, what is it, Bastet and who she's with, Jin'e, I believe. I think that's still #1 right now on global. And then maybe Ling Wang and Gung Chen afterwards, right? But anyways, she's gonna have it with Ling Wang, and this one you're gonna be Ling Wang deals 1000% fire damage, and then team gains Scorching Sun on cast last 7 seconds, and then Gung Chen's water damage increases by 15% in that last 12 seconds, and Gung Chen deals 1500% water damage. So yeah. Now keep this in mind when it comes to the ultimate skill chain. I still think, especially if you're piloting Jinwoo in that Jinwoo, Ling Wang, Gung Chen team comp, which Gung Chen is now going to complete that Jinwoo, Ling Wang team. Right now, most people are using Hera as a substitute, but when Gung Chen comes out, it's going to be Gung Chen in that team. So you're going to slot her in, but if you're still piloting Jinwoo, I think Jinwoo, Ling Wang ultimate skill chain is going to be still more beneficial because you're piloting Jinwoo. You want Jinwoo to be able to hit the hardest. Now, for me personally, when Gung Chen comes out, I'm going to be a Gung Chen main, meaning I'm going to try and make her a main DPS. So with that in mind, I'm going to be using the Ling Wang Gung Chen ultimate skill chain for that reason alone. So that way my Gung Chen is hitting as hard as possible. Hopefully that makes sense. But once again, if you're Jinwoo and maybe playing the team optimally, because Gung Chen, in my opinion, is more of like a sub DPS support type of modifier. She could do some pretty good damage, but your Jinwoo is still going to be the main damage dealer in that team. And she, you know, has that supporting capabilities with the CC and the other stuff that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. But for me personally, because I love Gung Chen so much and I'm getting a little tired of Jinwoo's gameplay, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm going to be switching. I'm going to be flip-flopping to where I have Gung Chen as my main DPS and when I'm piloting. So I'm going to use the Ling Wang ultimate skill chain. Now, I've been thinking about a team comp that may benefit Gung Chen a little bit more. I don't know. I have to play around with it and let me know your thoughts about a hyper buff Gung Chen with Hera instead of Jinwoo and then Ling Wang. And then I don't know. We'll see how that goes. We'll cross that road when we get there. But that's just something that I was thinking about. Anyways, moving over to her Aether codes. I think her Aether codes are fantastic. If you're going to be using her on the AI slot and mainly piloting Jinwoo in that optimal team comp, you're probably going to go with the red Aether code because the first one, their action is going to be slowed by 30% for the lifted enemies. Also, for the last part of the red Aether code, she's going to inflict armor break, decreasing their defense by 5%, which is incredible for 12 seconds. And then she's also going to inflict 5% all element resist decrease. So not only do you have the armor break, just defense decrease in general, but then you get the element resistance decrease, which is fantastic. And that's going to be a max of 4 stacks for each enemy. That is incredible, right? You're going to be able to do more damage, especially once again for your Jinwoo being able to hit a little bit harder because of that. So I think the red Aether code is going to be very optimal for an AI Gung Chen if you're going to have her on the AI slot. Now, if you're going to be trying to main her as a main DPS like myself, I think the blue Aether code is going to be the way to go because it's going to allow Gung Chen to deal AoE damage when enemies land, dealing 128% water damage, which is pretty significant. 128% is nothing to scoff at, in my opinion. And then when the last sequence of your basic attack hits lifted enemies, forcibly causes them to land. So that plays right into that first part of that Aether code because when they land, you deal that water damage. So the second one is going to be very synergistic with that, which is very nice. And then the last one, skill 3 Yang, self-attack increase by 16%, and that lasts for 12 seconds. Very, very nice. And then you're going to gather enemies. You're going to inflict the heavy abyss status to elite and leader enemies within gather range and normal enemies unaffected by the gather. So this is going to be good against those bosses. And then when any teammate hits enemies under the heavy abyss status, self triggers an attack, dealing 128% water damage. And this effect can only trigger once every second, and this damage multiplier will scale according to skill 3's level. So that is going to be very nice to get that extra damage for your Gung Chen. So I think the blue Aether code is going to be the way to go for main DPS Gung Chen like myself. So if that's what you're planning on doing, I think blue is going to be the way to go. But I think optimally, if you're playing her the way she probably should be played, which is on the AI slot, then the red one is going to be the way to go. Hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have any further questions about that, let me know in the comments down below. But that's essentially Gung Chen in a very high overview without going in depth about her yin and yang marks and how that works and things of that nature. Once again, I'll do that in a separate video when she releases in game on the global side, when I do my showcase and stuff like that. That's when I'll probably go more into detail about that. Now for the sigils, what are we going to be placing on her? I think optimally what we're going to be going with is obviously the new set, which I believe is the Lord of Heavens. It's going to increase rain damage by 10%. Range, not rain, range. And then when basic attack hits enemies, increase skill damage by 5%. And then when skill or ultimate hits enemies, increase basic attack damage by 15%. I think this is going to be very, very good. And then you're going to pair that, in my opinion, main DPS Gung Chen. Once again, me personally, I mean, maybe not even main DPS, just in general, Mermaid's Tear. And that's going to be in battle, increase water damage by 10%. And then when an attack connects, decrease the target's water resistance by 5% for 10 seconds. So this is going to be good. And then when attacking targets with decreased water resistance, increase crit rate by 5%. I think the Mermaid's Tear is going to be the optimal way to go, 100%. So I think you're certainly going to go with the new one, the Lords of Heaven and Mermaid Tear. Now you could go, if you want to, the Spartan Battle Cry if you have it. In battle, increases skill damage of rage modifiers by 10%, decreases the rage consumption of skills by 20%. This is certainly another option that you can go with. So you do have some options that you can work with, but I think those two that I mentioned earlier are going to be the most optimal ones in my opinion. Now moving over to her signature functor, I know a lot of people are going to be wondering, is it a necessity? Yeah, it kind of is a necessity. Where is it at? Tianwan. It kind of is a necessity, and the reason being is because not only is it a necessity for Gung Chen herself, but also the Tianwan Gen Zone in general. And we talked about this one before, but just in case you missed that, when you have this equipped on Gung Chen, you're gonna obtain the following effects: Tianwan Modifier spinal damage increases by 5%. Tianwan Modifier's instantaneous melee and range damage increases by 2%. That's just nutty in of itself right there. And then you move on, the duration before a stagnated enemy can be stagnated again is decreased to 27 seconds. So that's very nice. And then the armor break, that's a quality of life right there. And then armor break status inflicted by self to all enemies increased to 6%. So you get a greater armor break. And then independent damage dealt by self to lifted enemies or enemies under heavy abyss status increases by 8%, which is that blue Aether code that we talked about, which is incredible for DPS Gung Chen. And then when enemies with modifier points appear, increase modifier points by 8%. After exiting modify mode, increases modifier points by 8%. So not only is this signature functor incredibly good for Gung Chen herself, but as you can see, for all Tianwan modifiers in general. This is what makes the Tianwan Gen Zone, not only the Gen Zone effects that you get for putting the Tianwan modifiers together, how good that is, but for as a team as a whole, for all the modifiers in that team of the Tianwan Gen Zone, it's just something that you can't get from the general Gen Zone functor of the Tianwan Gen Zone for those modifiers. It's just there's too much quality of life and good buffs that you're getting and supporting capabilities that you're getting from this signature functor. It's what makes Gung Chen not only a great, you know, sub DPS slash main DPS, but also as a great support, is the signature functor in tandem with the rest of her kit, right? That's what makes her such a great support with the signature functor. Without the signature functor, she just becomes a pretty solid, decent support with the CCing capabilities and, you know, the armor break and whatnot, and then a pretty solid DPS character, right? But with the signature functor, it makes her more well-rounded, more universal, right? It makes her far better than what she could be without it, and it's, in my opinion, essential to get the signature functor for her to be the best that she possibly can be, not only for herself but for the Tianwan Gen Zone. So I hope that makes sense. Anyways, in terms of team comps, like I spoke about, Gung Chen, Jinwoo, Ling Wang is going to be that team comp that's going to be dominating on global, because it dominated on CN and I think still dominating on CN. I'm going to try a hyper buff Gung Chen with Hera and Ling Wang and try that out as a main DPS. And then there's going to be future teams that come out that you can use her in. That's going to be very beneficial, that she's going to slot in, because she's going to be good for Tianwan Gen Zone in general. And we have a lot of Tianwan Gen Zone modifiers coming out here very, very soon moving forward. So anyways, we'll talk more about teams when she releases on the global side. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for all your support. I do truly appreciate it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Remember to stand out, be different, have fun, go further beyond in everything that you do. My name is Cody. You call me further. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.